Hello, and welcome to another fully live news episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinzie. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and today we have a very special guest on, Ryan, the creator of some very cool the porter over of some very cool Bluetooth hacking tools and the creator of a very cool Bluetooth hacking detector. Ryan, thank you for joining us today.
All right. Hiya. Nice to meet you.
And our usual contributor, Killian, is alive and well. He is fine. He even offered to come on the stream today, but juggling three guests instead of just two kind of seemed like a lot of intensity for our little stream. So I wanted to keep it simple. And thank you for coming on the stream today. So if you are in the audience, you might not have seen our friend Ryan, except in me showing off some of the great tools that he's ported over to the Nugget platform on the last stream. So I have a Bluetooth Nugget here, and this is a, let's call it a non-standard Nugget that is a version of the open source tool my friends and I have been working on for the last several years, and it has a special microcontroller in it that can do Bluetooth stuff. And how useful that was going to be was kind of up for debate until Ryan went ahead and made a couple prototypes that actually show off some really cool Bluetooth. I would call them attacks. I guess they could be denial service attacks that were first kind of showed off at DEF CON and then have been kind of all over the place since. So Ryan, do you want to tell us a little bit about, I guess, like how you got interested in this and like what it was like to port something over to a new piece of hardware? Because this attack had been out for a little bit, and I understand that you saw it, were interested in it, saw that it was supported on this interesting microcontroller that could also be kind of hooked up to a more like useful or like physical display. So the proof of concept looks a little bit more visual, because often this kind of like lacks the like pizzazz of being very useful for beginners if it's based on a microcontroller.
Yeah, so I had already had one of the USB nuggets, and I've been playing around with it a little bit, and then had seen a few videos of the BLE spam attack stuff on Flipper Zero devices, and then I was just thinking, like, there can't be that much different in a Flipper Zero. There's bound to be something that can do this attack as well, like on an ESP microcontroller. So as probably everybody does, just start scouring GitHub to see if there's any projects that look like they can do something similar. And of course there was. So immediately got on AliExpress and ordered an S3 or ESP32 S3 Mini, and waited, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks. And I was like, I really hope Apple don't patch this by the time this arrives, because I want to play with this. So weirdly though, Apple hadn't patched it by the time it arrived, and I was playing around with it, and I was like, this would make a good video, because there wasn't really any YouTube videos at that point showing how to do it. And yeah, the rest is kind of history from there. It was only like a month ago. So played around with it, and then I think at the end of that video maybe showed off the USB nugget and said it'd be really cool to try and put this onto a nugget and make a little bit of a UI for it. And that's when we sort of started chatting about it. But yeah, from there it's been good fun working with it. I didn't really have an interest in Bluetooth stuff before, or any knowledge in Bluetooth stuff before, so it's all new to me.
So I also want to give you a shout out. Like this little device I'm holding right here is an S3 Mini with a little LiPo battery backpack strapped on. And if I plug in a LiPo battery here, which deviously is like inverted from like the normal polarity of like most batteries you buy. So like if I plug in most batteries, it'll just fry this instantly. Fun little fact about making hardware. I can make a very kind of primitive version of this tool that just spams out like Bluetooth beacons and makes most iPhones very, very annoying to use. iPads too, and sometimes that can be a problem if like, imagine like a doctor's office that uses iPads to do like some sort of like medical diagnosis, or imagine a pilot that's using an iPad for some sort of thing in the cockpit. Like very, very annoying to do this attack. But what I would say that my criticism of this initial form factor is you can't scale it. You can't decide, like, you can't really play with it that much. Like it's a microcontroller, it's kind of inscrutable, and you can connect to it over serial with a second device and start working with it. But what I really like that you did was you put it on something that has like a screen, buttons, and even like a little, like the NeoPixel for status. And like when you're doing this, like the NeoPixel turns blue when it's running, so you immediately know that an attack is going. You can select from like which version of the attack you want to run. So if you don't want to be as disruptive, or if you want to cut it off at a certain point, it's easier to do that. I just think like taking it, like one of the things that like hackers do is they'll find a project that's cool, but like has some limitations, and then they'll find a way to make like the next group of people who are interested in it have a little bit of an easier time doing that. And I really have to say, like, it's super cool that if you guys haven't seen the menu already, like, you know, you can scroll to the side to try out different types of attacks. Like, it really is cool to be able to take this like monolithic thing, you know, that you like put in your back pocket and it runs the attack and people get mad, and turn it into more of a research tool. Like, how does this particular version of the attack affect devices? Like, can I be more precise with it? So yeah, I just have to say, like, I'm really, really happy that you were able to take this thing that was for, I would say, intermediate microcontroller enthusiasts. Is that how you would see yourself?
I don't know. I mean, really, the first kind of stuff I'd been playing around with was on the S2 mini, just messing around with. I think you have something like an SSDP Fisher or something like that.
Yeah.
That's the first kind of project I kind of started messing around with, trying to build like a captive portal thing, and that's the first project where I had added in the sort of like side-scrolling menu thing for changing Wi-Fi networks. So I had a bit of a basis there to then use that same UI for the BLE spam attack one. So yeah, no, I wouldn't say I'm very knowledgeable in that. My background's more like web development and sort of like React and JavaScript stuff. So this is my first sort of taste of playing around with Arduino and C. So
that's actually even better, in my opinion. Just because, like, you know, I kind of assume that for me anyway, like I would describe myself as a mid-level microcontroller enjoyer. I don't call myself a professional. I just use them a lot, you know. So if I see a GitHub repo that's interesting to me, I can slap it into Arduino, and I just assume that that person forgot to tell me about all the libraries I need to import.
yeah.
You know, like, you know, getting yours running, like I've done this before, so I was able to, you know, like be like, oh, this is missing, that's missing, like I need to install this library. But the average person like might have a harder time of it. And what I think is helpful is like learning as a beginner those core troubleshooting skills to be like, oh, okay, like if I want to write my own piece of software for this, or if I want to modify something to be a little bit better. An example I would give is when I first got started with this, I took Spacehoon's deauth detector and I modified it to like basically give more information. So when people are doing deauthentication attacks, I changed the deauthor so that instead of just showing deauth attacks, it also showed disassociation attacks, and then also indicated on the NeoPixel which was going on. So what was cool is like I created a visual way to identify what hacking tool was being used because of the pattern of packets it would send. So I could literally be like, oh, okay, it's blinking back and forth. Like I know that that's AirPlay NG or something, you know, like, so that was cool to be able to take something and modify it lightly and then release it back into the wild and make it a little bit better. But it's hard, you know, you have to, for a beginner anyway, you have to learn how to import the board. You have to learn how to fix those inscrutable compilation errors. And I've kind of started teaching people CircuitPython more because, you know, they don't have the compilation errors and whatever. But can you, I guess, like explain like your process as a beginner then for like, how did you get through like being mostly used to, was it like, you know, having to solve errors in web development that like made it easier for you to get through the compiler stuff? Because like I find that to be one of the more challenging things for beginners to do, like what you did.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a lot of head scratching and Googling, and thankfully now we do have ChatGPT for a lot of that kind of stuff, of just copy and pasting errors and seeing what ChatGPT spits out and just sort of bashing it until it works. And a lot of commenting lines of things like to see what breaks, that kind of thing. But I think that really is the best way to learn. I'd be the same with any web development stuff I'm doing. Find like a similar repo on GitHub and just try to break it and try to add one little bit at a time and see if it works.
So how long did it take you to then take something that was meant for this like faceless, screenless, buttonless prototype and turn it into something that had not only like you know, like buttons and a screen, but also like a little face? And am I wrong in seeing a little Bluetooth icon that goes over the Nugget's head when it's doing the Bluetooth attack? Did you add that graphic?
That was nearly the hardest part to do, to be honest, because I had no idea about that. Because I think I was reusing a lot of the kind of graphics from your other projects, and I'd kind of like worked out how to move the cat over a little bit, and like I had to find some, I don't even know what online tool it was, where you just like do pixel drops and try to change it back into graphics code. But yeah, I don't think it took too long, because as I say, the main project that did all the functionality was already there. It was just sort of stripping that out and putting it into kind of a menu system and working out how that loop thing works. I'm still not really sure how the loop system works when we're doing it, but yeah. So like, I think you've probably seen playing around with that. Like to stop the attack, you have to like smash the down button to try and get it to like jump out of the loop. But
oh, I was just unplugging it.
Yeah.
At a certain point, I was just like pressing it. And
Yeah.
it's just like, yeah, it works really well if you just unplug it or hit the reset
perfectly, button. Yeah. If you time it perfectly, it should turn off. But I have no idea what I'm doing there. But as I say, it's like it didn't take too long because the main functionality was there. But yeah, I just it's a nice platform to work on because it feels like a little Game Boy, and there's something like kind of magic about writing some code and then holding it in your hand and being able to walk around the house with it and make things pop up on my wife's phone.
Okay, so first, James in the audience says ChatGPT won't shame you or be rude, unlike some forums, and I absolutely agree. When I was trying to get like this code up and running, and I was popping some errors and I couldn't tell where they were, I was like, ChatGPT, read this for me. Like, I don't have time for it. And it came back with like the next step for me to do. And I have to say, for beginners who might be intimidated because maybe they're a web developer and they never touched a microcontroller before, that sense of satisfaction of getting it compiled, like when I actually got your code to finally compile, and after like maybe 5 minutes of like adding libraries and stuff, I was just like, yes, like that feeling of satisfaction is really empowering. And then to have it working in your hand and affecting other devices, that really is magical. It's like what kind of makes it all worth it. So yeah, I think that ChatGPT is honestly a really big motivator for people who want to try out a project to see if they can do it and then get stuck at a certain point along the way. I would still say though, like knowing, I feel like, you know, people's experience and knowing how to do research online is critical to being able to get into this sort of thing. Because if you don't know how to look up an error, or you don't know how to find an error or resolve an error, like you really get stuck pretty easily with this sort of thing. So before we go too much further, I wanted to ask, do you want to show the demo perhaps, so people know kind of what we're talking about? Because I also want to talk about building the detector, because that in and of itself, I think is a really cool and interesting idea.
Yeah, so the video I have is of the detector. Is that okay?
Cool. Yeah. Do you want to talk about it a little bit first?
Yeah.
So the most perfect loop that can be made as a technologist is to both create a problem and then create the solution, right? That's cybersecurity, isn't it? So in this case, we have the problem of people starting to spam these Bluetooth attacks. And of course, it's not just, you know, this, by the way, we don't even sell this version of the Nugget assembled. So in order to even do this, you got to buy one of the kits and actually solder it together, which is kind of cool. It's kind of cool. I think in the very near future, seeing as I just bought like 100 like S3 minis, it's very possible we start selling some of the Bluetooth version of this. However, you know, it's a lot of different devices now that are capable of doing this. Flippers can do it. I think that there's like even like an Android version that can do it. So when I was at Chaos Communication Congress, some of the people in the hardware hacking areas who had iPhones were just like, it's so annoying that I can't use my phone during this, you know, during this conference. So, yeah, it keeps popping up. So how do you actually track people that are doing that? And in my head, you know, I'm linking everything back to what I know best, which is Wi-Fi attacks. So like deauthentication attacks are protocol-based attacks where you're using a protocol that's allowed. It's a protocol that's like a real part of the Wi-Fi stack. And you're abusing it basically to cause devices to behave in an undesirable way. In my opinion, this Bluetooth attack is very similar. It's a protocol-based sort of denial of service attack. It's like an annoyance attack, but it's basically abusing like a legit protocol in order to cause the device to do something undesirable. In this case, not disconnect from a network, just pop up, you know, like you downloaded the wrong like torrent like back in the day. So what exactly would you do about that? Well, with the deauthentication attack, we can first indicate that it's happening and then perhaps like track it down. And these attacks might be a little easier to track down because the MAC address of the device that's broadcasting those deauthentication attacks might remain consistent. Bluetooth is different. And I know that you ran up against this. Can you explain like why this is kind of a tough thing to do with Bluetooth and kind of how that works?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I did obviously was the spam attack thing and seeing it pop up on the phone. I was like, looking at the code, the way it was working, there was a lot of MAC randomization stuff happening in the code and sort of like building together these packets that were going to look like Apple AirPods or like a TV color balance request, that kind of stuff. I'm like, if this is being constructed like this, I'm sure it's flying through the air somehow for the device to kind of pick it up. So obviously went back on GitHub and started looking for Bluetooth monitors or like scanners, that kind of thing. Found one that was sort of designed as a crowd monitor, and was hooked up to like I think it was like a React front end or something, and they were using it as a way to sort of track movement of people through a space. Must have been like a university project, that kind of thing. So had a look at that and downloaded it, stripped out the website part of it, and just put it on the ESP and got a serial thing going out, and immediately sort of found like my TV and my keyboard and my iPhone and computer by sort of like looking up the MAC addresses. And then I was like, right, I'm going to put on the spam attack here and see what happens. And the serial terminal just started going absolutely crazy. So I was like, okay, maybe we can grab these and try to work out what's going on. The problem obviously is the MAC address stuff is being randomized, so you can't really pinpoint where exactly it is coming from. But that was kind of the starting point for it, was just seeing all of those packets flying through and trying to work out what to do with them next.
That's so cool. Okay, so for anybody who hasn't dealt with radio signals and Wi-Fi and all this stuff, MAC addresses, I kind of equate them to like the license plate of a car. So if we're comparing a computer to a car that's joining a network, then the computer would be the car with the license plate. The license plate would be the MAC address, and when it goes into the parking lot, it gets assigned an IP address, which is like a parking space, and that parking space can change based on availability. But in a lot of cases, the MAC address remains the same, or so it used to be. Mobile devices started being targeted by department stores and other creeps who wanted to basically build profiles on where you would go. And they would use that constant identifier, that license plate of your device, to figure out where you were going. And they would sell the hell out of that data. So that became a pretty big risk to privacy. And the fact that you were walking around like a tagged animal with like a single identifier broadcasting from you everywhere you go really started to stitch things together and make it so it was possible to do a lot of surveillance on private citizens just by looking up the data that was being gathered by, like Sears and stuff. So manufacturers stepped in and tried to make things more private by creating MAC address randomization. And this is a concept where every time or every period of time that the manufacturer defines, the device will put out a different randomized MAC address that is not the real MAC address that it uses as an identifier. There's a couple problems with that. If you try to join a network, for example, and your device is randomizing constantly, then like certain features might not work, like network whitelisting or blacklisting. It might look like 20 devices have joined your network, even though it's only one that changes its MAC address every time it joins. And there's other problems too that happen with the scheme. So MAC address randomization is a great idea. It helps with privacy, but it also sometimes causes problems. And in this case, it's causing problems because even though we can detect a large amount of spoofed Bluetooth packets, pretending to be like a certain device, we can't necessarily distinguish them and say that, okay, this is all coming from the same device. Obviously, like some like advanced fancy fingerprinting thing where we like look at the radio of the ESP and like find out how it like stamps its packets or whatever and find some like weird quirk. Like maybe we could smell like, the Bluetooth attack in some other way. But for a basic overview, we have all these packets. We can count like when there's like a suspicious amount of them. And that was the initial function of the Bluetooth like attack detector, right? Like basically being able to detect when there's like an unreasonable or suspicious amount of Bluetooth, like is it pairing requests or just like beacons?
I think it's just beacons coming out. So yeah, as you said, it was just trying to find out a way to logically group together when there's a flood of these sort of beacon requests coming in. So the way I had it set up initially was you do an initial scan for 10 seconds and find all of the devices that you're kind of used to. So you might find 9 or 10 devices. If you find them again in a second scan, they'll sort of be marked as safe devices. Don't know whether they're actually safe or not, but they're safe because we've seen them more than once in this case. So they've got the same MAC address at least. And then if a flood attack happens and you start seeing lots of new unique devices that never make it into the safe list, so you never see them more than once, then we're sort of going, oh, there's something a bit weird going on here. And then the sort of variable added into that is that I added a way to sort of add a max number of unique devices that you're happy to have flood the system at one time. So if you happen to go somewhere where there's normally 20 devices around that are absolutely fine, then you can sort of set the sensitivity that way.
Right, and this is very clever behavior. So you're using the behavior of the attack tool, the fact that it's going to create. So basically, like what I love about this is you're using like heuristic ways of detecting this. You're not like looking for a MAC address range. You're not looking for anything other than the behavior of this attack. And that is, which is quite unusual, a large amount of new devices you haven't seen before, which you only see once. Like when does that usually happen? Like maybe if you're like running through a subway or like a crowded area, you know, like something like that might happen. But under normal circumstances, that shouldn't happen. I guess maybe if you live over a train and it like goes under you, you know, and like a bunch of devices pop up and then go away and you don't see them again, maybe you would get a false positive. But aside from that, I think you designed a very clever way of using the behavior of this attack to catch it. And I say that because I also did, so we did an episode a little while ago on catching Wi-Fi pineapples. And what we would do is, you know, when they power on, they listen for different networks nearby devices are trying to connect to, and then they create that network and allow it to connect, and then boom, they have a man in the middle position. So I created a little microcontroller program that just tries to connect to a bunch of random ass networks that don't exist. And then if it ever succeeds, we know that something has detected it trying to connect to this network that doesn't exist, created that network out of thin air, and then allowed it to connect. So that's how I was detecting the pineapple. It seems that just by using the way that a device runs an attack, it's possible to create these detection tools. And we have a very smart person in the audience. Can you not get signal strength, have it display average signal with a hotter, colder style output when you walk around till the signal gets stronger? What an interesting idea.
Exactly.
Care to address that one?
Yeah, so I was watching your stream on Wednesday, and you sort of hinted to this idea of it would be really cool to sort of get the signal strength and perhaps use that to sort of walk around and try to find where the device is spamming from. So the next morning I was like, right, I wonder, can I try and get something working? Because I knew I was potentially going to be on the stream with you tonight. So I was like, if I can get something working before then, that would be kind of cool. So as the person has commented there, that is what exactly the method of how I managed to do that. So yeah, so just sort of grouping the MAC addresses together once you sort of trigger the spam detector, like once you go over that threshold that you've set, then just start grouping all of the MAC addresses into that, finding the average signal strength, and then showing that on the screen. And then you can walk around and hopefully try to find where the device is. But yeah, exactly the way the commenter is described there.
Yes, that's okay. So that's, first of all, that's incredibly cool and very smart, and I like it a lot. And second of all, look at the short loop on this show. We got the suggestion, and it's already like that. It's done. Amazing. You're welcome. You're welcome, audience. So yeah, the idea here is locating the culprit. Like if we are at a conference or something, then like how would we actually track someone down who is annoying everyone and making it not possible for them to use their devices? And this kind of seems like the way of doing it. So do you wanna show off what it looks like?
Yeah. Let me see if I've got this here. What is the best way for me to show this to you?
If you share whatever screen you'd like to, I'll enable it. It doesn't show automatically, so you can take your set up and just let me know when you want me to turn it on. And one question from the audience, which I don't know the answer to, does Bluetooth still use ad hoc networking or AOC hack networking? That I don't know.
Let me see if I can get this working.
Yes, it's good to play both sides or else you will fall behind the culprit. Yeah, I think being able to detect these attacks. One thing I'll mention is if there's two people standing at opposite sides of the room, both doing Bluetooth spam attacks, it will utterly confuse the sensor and it will return, garbage results because you'll basically get equal like averages like as you go through the area. So there's definitely the possibility of multiple devices confusing this, but if there's only a single device doing it, then it seems like this would be a pretty useful way of being able to track it down. I will say if you added a directional antenna, then this would become, very, very useful, even if there were multiple devices. So, all right, shall I show your screen?
I think I've worked out how to do it. There we go.
Ta-da! Yep. All right, there we go.
Okay.
I'm also going to hide the chat for a second, not because I'm ashamed of you, but just because I want to see this as big as possible.
Okay, I'll probably skip through this a wee bit because it's just me dandering around the garden for a while. So this is what the scanner looks like. And you can see, I know I'm standing quite far away from it, but immediately that unique number is going up kind of high and the cat gets a little bit scared. So the number popping up between the ears there is walking around a lot. Minus 96. So
Mm.
that's very weak signal. And then we take a few steps, we're at minus 94. And you can see the unique number is just climbing and climbing and climbing.
Whenever I'm describing RSSI to beginners, I'm like, think of it as percentage of signal loss. It's not, but like if you want to just think of it roughly, like the lower the number, the better the reception. Like 90, whatever, means we're losing like 90% of the signal, if you want to think of it that way.
So I don't know whether you can see that. It's going up. So we're at minus 81 here.
Which is better. Does the nugget have little cross eyes? Or
yeah.
So it's being attacked. And it's got the question mark. It's probing.
Yeah.
Oh no, wait. Sorry, I thought that there's a question mark. That's just negative 7.
Oh yeah, that's just
77. Okay, yeah. All right.
So at this point, I know I'm standing very close to where it is. So I'm guessing probably testing this outside is not the best idea. Maybe I don't know whether their signal strength kind of is not as good outside. Maybe if you're inside, it would bounce around a wee bit more. And I'll wind this on a wee bit just to sort of see. So that's the spammer. And we're right beside it, and then we should see this go to sort of the lowest that it can go.
Cool. And is it showing the number of? Oh yeah, okay. So can you explain the U, S, and M?
Oh yeah. So U is unique devices.
Okay.
S is safe. So you've scanned, and they've appeared more than once in a scan, or more than once across multiple scans. And then the M is your max safe devices. So before you press up and sort of start the scan, you can use these directional buttons to sort of set your sort of threshold.
I see. Okay, so there's a configure button. So I actually haven't flashed this over yet. And one thing I would like to do, if I have your permission and don't feel put on the spot, is I would like to like compile a binary of this, or if you would like to compile a binary of this and like post it for people to just flash and upload if they've never touched Arduino before, just because this is such a cool proof of concept. I honestly think the detector, for people that are just trying to run like a class or a conference and having someone like spam them with like their flip or whatever, this is the revenge they deserve. To be able to be like, no, it's your backpack. I know it's your backpack that's doing it. Can you just turn it off, please? Because I know it's you.
Yeah, no, definitely. That sounds like a good idea. The easier it is to get it onto something, the better, I think.
One comment from the audience. I love that the cat reacts. This is the kind of thing I need to start including in my own work. I love it too. Honestly, the fact that you've kind of like continued the tradition of nugget stuff being like cute and getting beginners to be interested in it because it looks approachable and it's something that you can hold in your hand and you can see the effect it has on other devices, or you can rather like detect the effect that other devices are having. I think that that's just so powerful and so cool. So I just have to say, like, thank you for making this like graphic and like putting the time and energy into, you know, getting that little Bluetooth symbol and like everything else you did. Like, I think it really does push this forward and make it better and make it so that other people can have a better experience using it. So yeah, I really, really like that.
Yeah, no, it's good fun drawing cats. It's not not a hard thing to do. It's good fun to sort of add that like little bit of extra into it.
So if somebody wanted to follow along with this project, what would be the best way to do it? I mean, aside from obviously the GitHub repo, but is there anything they would need in terms of hardware, or like, I guess, like, what would you advise for people who want to like follow along or like build this for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, there's not too much extra that you need beyond the sort of kit that you sell. So you just need, the only difference would be an S3 Mini, which I believe that you do have in a kit now as well. So there's nothing extra you have to solder onto this. And yeah, I mean, even the stuff that I'm using to put these together is like a £3, or saying £3, like maybe a $5 soldering iron off AliExpress, which is maybe a bit dangerous. But like, there's not a lot of, I've not got a full kit for trying to do this. I'm just sort of trying to squidge them together. You can probably tell from my solder joints there, but if it works and the light comes on, I'm happy. Yeah.
So I'll show this on my screen real quick. this is the kit that was made off of, but the Nugget design is open source. So the PCB files are available. The GitHub repository has recently been renamed for the archive stuff, but that stuff is all still up there. So if you want to make this for yourself, if it's a little expensive for you to grab a kit, then you can absolutely do that. These are the components of the kits. They're the microcontroller, the buttons, and you soldered it. It's not that bad. It was designed for beginners. To be able to put together. And if you select the option that has the S3 Mini, that's this one right here, the extra prototype kit, then you can build one of these Bluetooth nuggets. But honestly, based on how much cool stuff you've made for it, I'm just going to offer this for sale pretty soon, because I think that, you can obviously make one, you can solder one, or you can just buy the parts yourself and make it. But for anybody who just wants to try this out and have like a little detector, like I want to be able to offer it. So that would be the first thing. And then obviously your GitHub repo, where you have both the problem and the solution all in one. Cool. And I'll take this, revert back to your screen. Oh, infinite tunnel. Sorry, I should have told you. I got it. Sorry. I got it.
You got it.
Cool. So I will put our chat back on now that we're not showing the demo anymore. But yeah, so if anybody has any questions in the stream about what it was like to make this, how the attack works, although obviously, we're porting an attack that somebody else has made. However, like we've also taken a look at the way it works and have like a decent idea of how it works in real life. Some of the quirks about this attack, did you want to mention like the incomplete, I guess, mitigation of this attack by Apple, how it like works sometimes, it doesn't work other times?
Yeah. Like I said at the start, I was really surprised that by the time I even got my hands on one of the microcontrollers that they hadn't fully patched it yet. So I think there was maybe a week or so where when I was playing around with it, you could crash any iPhone with iOS 17. I think where my wife's phone was running iOS 16 and it didn't have any effect on that. So I think it's just an iOS 17 thing. And then Apple did do a patch, and there's lots of chat on the Flipper Zero Reddit group, and they were like, yeah, it still seems like it's kind of working, and some people's phones were still crashing, but mostly the messages were still popping up. So yeah, it's still confusing to me why they haven't done a little bit more to lock it down, because as you said, like it's not going to crash your phone, but it is very, very annoying, and it would interrupt your normal use of a phone if it seems to sort of tack onto your phone and like your phone just wants to keep showing these messages. But like we were saying before, I've been playing around with it this week, sort of testing out the scanner and the random spammer, and was finding like even if my phone was a certain angle or a certain distance, or whether it was set down, that would like determine whether the pop-ups were going to keep coming up or not. So yeah, I think there's a lot more of like testing and probably a bit of research to do into exactly how it's working. But yeah, no, it is interesting, and if you can get a chance to play around with it, it's very satisfying getting something to pop up on your iPhone from a little cheap computer.
So I have to say also, like what you mentioned about like maybe setting the phone down or like holding it at an angle, that might sound like silly to some people that haven't worked with like mobile devices and radio signals and stuff before. But for me, as a Wi-Fi person, I was telling you earlier, what you do with your phone actually does affect the way that it interacts with like radio devices, like the way that it sends Wi-Fi packets, stuff like that. So if you take your device and you pick it up, if you take your device and you unlock it, and if you take your device and you press the like internet or like Wi-Fi button, so it starts doing a Wi-Fi scan, those three actions cause a flood of activity from most mobile devices, or at least Android mobile devices, which I've done research on, because they're triggering events. It basically says the user is about to use this, go ahead and set up these services in the background, get things ready. And that actually does influence the way that the device interacts with other radios. So it's not unreasonable to think that like setting down your device might trigger something that makes it more receptive to these spam attacks. So more research is needed. If you guys want to build this and try it out on your own devices in an area you're allowed to, then we are trying to understand, how has Apple attempted to mitigate this? In what circumstances is the mitigation maybe not working? Is it holding it up over your head? Is it at an angle? Is it putting it down? Is it like there's all these different things that could influence the way that it's sending and receiving radio packets. So I'm really impressed by this project. I think especially the detector is something that is really useful right now. And the fact that you made it configurable and you were clever about using like heuristics of the attack to identify it and then like track down the source. Like, I think that that's just, it's really cool. So even though you might be like new to microcontrollers, I already think that you're using them in the best possible way, which is to take a proof of concept, make it visual, make it so that other people feel like they can follow along and learn about the way the technology works, and then, you know, put it out there. Like, all those things are incredible to me. So I just wanted to give you a shout out as a member of our community. I'm like particularly proud of. I literally just sent you a bunch of parts, you know, and you turned it into something that I think is really incredibly cool. So Ryan, thank you for that. And thank you for coming on and like sharing with our audience, like the way that this works, like your path as a beginner, like getting into this, and like why you think these sorts of prototypes are like fun and empowering. I think what you said about like having the computer in your hand actually running explains exactly why I went from computer science like into electrical engineering and microcontrollers. Something about having the smoke come out of the computer and knowing you killed it because you pushed your exploring too hard, but not being mad because the computer cost $4, and then like eventually getting it working and getting it right. Like, that's such a powerful experience for like a beginner that hasn't tried or really engaged with this kind of technology before. And the budget is affordable, you know, like for people to scrape together their own stuff, like here it costs $50, $60, $70. Like, so that to me, compared to a Raspberry Pi, which is still hovering around like $150, $160, depending on which model you're getting. Or if you're getting the Raspberry Pi 5, never, since I ordered it from Sparkfun and it's still not here. Like, you know, like this is an alternative that makes it so you can participate in cutting edge research while still keeping it friendly enough that you don't feel excluded. Because again, I consider myself to be like a mid-level microcontroller enjoyer, but with a little bit of chat GPT, it sounds like people who know how to, what the right procedure is to fix a bug is really like the number one requirement here. Those sorts of people can get involved in making their own prototypes or tweaking something that's already out there without having it be like this crazy, huge burden. You know, it sounds like you kind of had fun with this project.
No, definitely. I mean, like you said, it's a really nice platform to work on. And I mean, I had played around a wee bit with like Raspberry Pi Zeros before, but I just didn't want to start soldering stuff onto them and like messing around with them. So like definitely the form factor is so easy to pick up, and like you say, it doesn't really matter if you break one. Like the other day, I soldered the headers on back to front. One was pointing up and one was pointing down. I was like, I'm not even going to try desoldering that. Like, it doesn't matter. There's no.
Yeah. So when I was originally, so a little history from the Nuggets inception. I was teaching a lot of microcontroller classes, maybe like 3-4 years ago, and I was mostly using the ESP8266 as like in the D1 mini form factor, and it was just this like little kind of pretty mysterious metal box that people would plug into their computer and they would struggle to interact with, and it was cool. But there was other ways people were making this thing useful, and I was like obsessed with like, have you ever seen the Detector like wristwatch?
Oh yeah.
It's like the worst watch ever. It's a big ass, like, you know, like bulky, like not very good watch, but you know, it brings most of the cool functions that you can get out of that microcontroller like to your wrist, and you don't need another device to do them. And I was like obsessed with that. I was like, that's so cool that you can do most of these attacks like without needing a second device. And it's like, you know, it has like the Wi-Fi interface and all that other stuff, but so do the other microcontrollers. That's not what really got me about it. It was that you could take this thing, and instead of being this like mysterious metal box that like, you know, you don't know what's happening inside, it became this like cute like Game Boy like thing where suddenly I felt like there was all this cool shit I could do with it. And I was like, that's amazing to me. So when I was setting out to like design the Nugget, I was originally collaborating with another creator who wanted to make it kind of like Game Boy style, but really like wanted to like push it away from that and like make it something else. And I was like, no, this needs to be cute. It needs to be cat shaped. It needs to appeal to people who have never done this before and might be intimidated by that inscrutable little metal box that gives you nothing but compilation errors. Like that sucks for people that are just getting started. So I'm really glad that resonated with you, because the magic I saw in like the Detector wristwatch like wasn't quite there, but I saw like a spark in something. And I think that this is kind of the what I saw, you know, being able to make it physical and make it fun. That was the hardest part with microcontrollers, you know? So yeah, thank you for building on this platform. And again, this is an open source thing. So if you are living somewhere with 100% import tax, like Brazil, as I found out recently, we have a lot of fans there who were struggling to be like, I've literally shipped 2 packages to Brazil ever in the history of our store. And we get a lot of orders all over the place. And it's because it's so expensive. So a lot of our people do make their stuff via open source kits. I know Hacker Boxes did a Wi-Fi Nugget kit not that long ago. And it's open source. Like we talked to them about it, like we're cool with it now. Like it surprised us initially. We're like, what the hell? Like, why did they do that? But then we were like, oh, right, because it's open source and not everybody can afford, the full price kit. If they want to support us, that's cool. People used to ask us, like, do we have a Patreon? And we wanted to make something instead that's a good educational platform. So yeah, it makes me happy to see people using it for its intended purpose, that being improving accessibility, and then making it so people who are obsessed with Bluetooth but have never had the chance to like work with it actually get a chance to experiment with some cool research. And maybe get inspired to learn more about it. Because I'm going to be honest, Bluetooth is like one of the radio protocols I've worked with very little, and this has pushed my understanding of it a bit, like by just getting me to work with it hands-on. So yeah, I'm fascinated by it, and I think it's really cool what you did, Ryan.
No, thank you. And as I say, I mean, I wouldn't really know what I was doing without a lot of your videos and content and your website and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, thanks to you as well.
Makes me really, really happy. So yeah, if you want to see more work like this, also, I just have to give a shout out to our Discord community. There are a lot of amazing people in our Discord community who have put out awesome stuff. I'm going to put it up on the screen real quick. But if you want to join our Discord community, I will drop a link in the chat. You can also go to nugget.dev, and it is linked there as well. I used to use nugget.lol, but it got taken down for spam again because I forgot to set up like the sender protection framework, and someone included it in like a spam email or something. I don't know. It's down again. But anyway, you can find our Discord community there at nugget.dev. And yeah, it's wonderful to have other people who are making contributions and other cool stuff. And frankly, like some of the project highlights that have come out are really, really interesting and fun, like community projects. So yeah, I also, did I send you one of the LiPo battery add-ons that we made?
Yep.
Okay,
I was just
cool.
playing with it
Yeah.
today because I realized I didn't have two power banks, so I was like, I need another way to turn this on. It works really well. It's class.
Yes, our friend Arya created these. I have one too, actually. Created these LiPo battery add-ons, and these are a derivative of the LiPo circuit we designed for our DEF CON game, which was really super fun. So we made these breakouts because people were buying our like DEF CON badge game just because it would allow like the Wi-Fi nugget to run on a LiPo battery. Like, maybe we should just make a breakout. So these are also stackable. We're coming out with more of these soon. For now, we're mostly sending them out to like researchers and people that are building with our platform, because like the on-off button are inverted. There's a couple little, it won't blow up a battery, but there's a little convenience thing that may not have been completely added yet. But yeah, there's a number of add-ons, accessories, and other things that are coming out for this that we've been testing and sending out to people. So if you want to build with this, like as Ryan can attest to, you make something cool, I will send you a bunch of extra stuff, experimental stuff, extra parts, things that we've been playing around with. Like, we love to support people that are making cool things in our community. So thank you for being one of those. And yeah, I also got some news I'm going to go through as I've got a little bit of time left, but I will answer this question. Can the Nugget be ran with an ESP32? Yes. So when the Nugget PCB was first designed, I decided that we were going to use the D1 Mini as the form factor. And the company that makes the D1 Mini form factor, which is a breakout board for the ESP8266, decided to make pin compatible like generations of this that use the next microcontroller and the next microcontroller and the next microcontroller, so it can be just directly plugged into the back, which I think is honestly amazing. So there is a version of the Nugget that you can just plug in an ESP32 that's like a D1 Mini form factor. It's a little big, honestly. The one that they made is fat. It kind of fits into the back like a little weirdly. But yes, you can totally do that, and that allows you to do like Marauder stuff if you want to. We've primarily focused on the D1 Mini, the S2 Mini, and the S3 Mini. There's also like the C5 Mini or whatever, and I don't care about that thing. It doesn't interest me. It doesn't have any of the stuff I like. It doesn't have native USB. It doesn't have Wi-Fi. Get it out of here. I don't care. But there's new stuff coming out that I'm really hoping will be added to like the D1, S2, S3 Mini family, like that new chip that Espressif just made that does 5 gigahertz radio. That is going to be some cool stuff, because there hasn't been a 5 gigahertz microcontroller available before for an affordable price. So if they happen to make it Nugget compatible, then that would be truly cool. But yeah, you can add like 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5 microcontrollers to the back of any Nugget PCB right now and get it going. And in fact, if you do grab the Nugget kit, you can solder together an Omni Nugget, which basically just has female pin headers on the back, so you can swap out the microcontroller you want to add to it, and just on one day run a USB Nugget, on the second day run a Wi-Fi Nugget, and just swap out the microcontroller. It's kind of fun. Some of us like developers will just have a couple of these Omni nuggets around to swap out and change out if we want. Obviously, over time, the pin headers will probably wear out, but for an experimental piece or something to be able to rapidly swap between microcontrollers and try out a different project or a different flavor, it's really cool. It's fun. What was your preference, Ryan? Did you make an Omni nugget or did you solder it in place?
I opted to just solder them in place. But yeah, maybe next time I'll make a hot swap one.
I find honestly that the S3 does most of the things that I want. The reason why I'm obsessed with this chip is it has native USB, it has Wi-Fi, it has Bluetooth, and it has dual cores. Whereas the S2 Mini has a single core, which makes some like multi-processing or like other things a little difficult for our developers. So the dual core, like the Bluetooth, all that stuff, like, you know, we can make an app that connects to it or like trigger it remotely, or even like do like more war driving where we're gathering Bluetooth signals and Wi-Fi signals. I'm excited about all of that. That sounds so cool. So yeah, that is the answer to that question. Yes, you can run an ESP32. It is a open source platform. So by the way, if you guys have any more questions, I will stop during the news. But Ryan, you want to hang around for the news with me? We got about 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'll hang around for the news.
All right, cool. Yeah. So let's talk about all the wonderful people that are getting free credit monitoring this week. So first up, this is actually a piece of good news. Kaspersky has come out with a script that is able to kind of, I guess I'll say it again, heuristically detect some of the really high-profile mercenary spyware that has come out. So this has been mostly by analyzing the shutdown.log file. And this is something that apparently, if you pay attention to the timing of different shutdown processes, you can actively detect infection, provided that you are rebooting your phone a lot. Already, it's kind of recommended if you suspect you might have been targeted by this sort of thing to reboot your phone often, as a lot of these attacks will not survive a reboot. But it seems as though every time you reboot your device, it leaves a little bit of forensic evidence if it has been infected with one of these pieces of spyware that can be analyzed in order to detect it. Now, this is really difficult because I basically talk about zero-day vulnerabilities that are being patched every week, that are being used by these mercenary spyware organizations that make tons of money selling access to the devices of reporters or human rights defenders or government officials to countries with incredibly spotty human rights records. So being able to identify the presence of these zero-day vulnerabilities is certainly something that's useful, because a lot of the time it takes a lot of time and energy to push out fixes, and they don't necessarily get to all devices that are targeted. So I would say this is a positive step towards being able to detect these mercenary spyware, like Pegasus-style attacks, which we keep seeing in the news over and over. So one piece of positive news. Another piece of positive news this week is the FTC banning another data broker. And this one was particularly creepy. So in the United States, we basically have no protection against just scooping up information about citizens. And In-Market Media, who is based out of Texas, was doing data aggregation and specializing in processing data in ways that violated people's privacy pretty spectacularly. You could target like Christian parents of toddlers. Let's see, Christian churchgoers, wealthy and not healthy, meaning people with like money that were attending like a lot of doctor's appointments, and parents of preschoolers. So this degree of granularity when it comes to like tracking people was something that the people swept up in this, which, by the way, the sheer number of people involved in this sort of tracking was like 300 million people. So that's like almost a population of the United States, give or take like 100 million people, like basically enrolled involuntarily in this data tracking that was not only keeping track of their religious affiliations, but also when they would go to receive healthcare. That to me is like a shocking amount of processing. But then again, you don't have laws, you don't go after people that are doing this. It certainly seems as though that is a profitable thing to do. So the FTC has gone through and has told them to delete location data, simplify the consent and withdrawal, alert consumers about the FTC actions, and offer an opt-out/deletion option, because most people had no idea that they were included in this data. Collect and use location data only with explicit consent. That's going to ruin their business model. Create a program to protect sensitive location data, which they made no effort to do before. Ensure that SDK partners obtain proper consumer consent. That was a big problem. And then enforce a strict privacy policy and data retention plan. By the way, they were retaining data for 5 years, which is a lot. That is a lot. So this company basically made a ton of money identifying Americans' religious affiliations, medical conditions, and where their kids went to school, selling that data, and then only recently got in trouble for all of those things. So this is the second data broker that I've seen targeted within the last 2 weeks. My hope is that this continues because honestly, everybody knew this was happening, but due to the lack of laws and regulation in our country, it certainly makes it difficult to go after those. All right, in our segment, who's getting free credit monitoring? It's going to be customers of Vans and the North Face, who apparently have a data breach affecting 35 million people. This is a ransomware situation that affected their stock, their inventory, like a lot of different systems, but also appears to involve a data breach. It's unknown currently what the data that was leaked is. However, this is a double exploitation attack, indicating that the attackers are not only wanting money to restore systems, they're also threatening to leak the information. Next up, I don't know if I like this or not. Microsoft is testing instant access to Android photos. So if you snap an Android photo, it shows up as a pop-up in Windows 11. You can click on it and then look at it in the snipping tool. Again, I don't know if I like this or not. It's just worth a mention because as an attacker, I can like see a way that that could be used to like link like someone's Android phone like to a Windows computer and then just look at everything they're doing. So I find this this creepy, but you know, if you want it, then there it is. We've also got Kansas State University under a cyber attack, which has disrupted their IT networks and services. This is a ransomware attack, and it appears that they are not paying. Therefore, you can expect classes to be delayed. This is also like the third university I've seen attacked in as many weeks. So the pace of attacks against universities delaying their schedules and causing chaos with classes is picking up the pace. It seems like schools have a uniquely difficult time recovering from these sorts of attacks, and that has made them a very tempting target for some of these threat actors. Next up, we have the U.S. government wanting 15 years in prison for the admin of breach forms. So this is Palm, aka Connor Brian Fitzpatrick, who recently also defied the terms of his bail by accessing an unmonitored computer and using a VPN. So nobody really knows what he did when he was connected to that. That proved to be a really bad idea, and he got his bail revoked, and now he is back in jail until the court case finishes going through. But 15 years is a lot of time for being the admin of breach forms. I imagine that breaching the terms of his bail were probably not very helpful. Oh, sorry, James. I've just had your 5 gigahertz message just splayed over all these news articles. All right. Next up, researchers at Google are talking about a new Spica backdoor. This is basically a scheme where you will get a phishing email that is trying to give you a PDF that is encrypted. And in order to decrypt the PDF, you need to download a decryptor from proton/decryptor whatever. So this is supposed to be some sort of tool that's going to decrypt it, but instead is just a Russian FSB backdoor. So please, you know, like I feel like I have to tell people like don't accept like random PDFs from people you don't know, but also don't download like .exe encryptor or decryptors for said PDFs. This like to me, like I was expecting some sort of like clever, like you open the PDF and it gets you. It's like the PDF isn't even the attack here. The PDF like seems to be inert. It's just the lure. Instead, it's like this decryptor they're trying to get somebody to download. So I thought it was clear that you weren't supposed to just download random.exe files, especially in response to like an email. But you know, this seems to be working. So these are government-backed campaigns. I believe they're probably widely automated, and you know, it only takes one to fall for it. So be on guard about downloading .exe files. Didn't think I had to say that, but here we are. So Have I Been Pwned added 71 million emails, and some of these include credentials from the NAS.API stolen account list. This is a lot. So this kind of reminds me of like the hate mail breach, like back a while ago, where like I was able to like comb through like my mom's like old breached passwords, which were like rude, by the way. But this is one of those breaches where like stealers and all these other sorts of like sources of breach like account credentials kind of get aggregated into a big old list that can be used to look up people's old passwords and things like that. So this aggregate list, again, 71 million email addresses associated, which is a lot of alerts going out to the Have I Been Pwned subscriber list. A lot of people on my Mastodon feed have been mentioning they've been getting notifications that there's been a breach. However, it does not specify what what website was breached. So nobody really knows. You know, you'll be getting like a notification that like your credentials were breached, but and that it was involved in this, but it doesn't specify what website's credentials were breached. So a lot of people just got a notification and they have no idea what it means. Like, huh, wonder what that is, because they're not getting enough information to really do anything about this. You know, like they don't know what information was leaked. And of course, this is a balancing act because it provides credentials, then like, you know, linking back to this data. Technically, anybody could just register that email address and then start monitoring breaches associated with it. So for attackers anyway, this might be a way to get secondary access to that by just monitoring email addresses you want to breach and seeing if like, have I been pwned, gives you some juicy information. So I understand the hesitation between giving out like full information, but I also get the frustration some people are having being notified that they're involved in a data breach and then like getting literally no information about like which website. Like this doesn't tell me anything. So yep. Sorry, it's if you got one of those breach notifications, I'm not sure if they're going to be more loquacious about that, or if they're just gonna leave you in the dark. But there we go. This is a commercial botnet that has infected about 170,000 Android TV boxes. These are Android open source partner devices, and this has been a growing botnet that has been apparent. Oh, all right, we've got our confusing graph of the week. Let's do it. The big pansy cybercrime group. Who did this? X Labs. All right. All right. So we've got these guys and they're over here building the firmware, the apps, the devices. The firmware goes down the river to these ECOS STB devices, and then the Android TVs get an app, which leads us to the infected TVs through the Pandora sphere and the PCDIN through these two C2 servers that these two stick figures are monitoring. That, I guess, affects over here with the big pansy P2P.CDN network, which infects the TV, I guess, again, with the DDoS targets. So thank you for this graph, which looks like it was drawn in crayon. Our winner for most confusing graph of the week. I don't know how this crime organization works, but I do know that there's some cloud servers, at least 2 of them, and that they attack targets. So the high level here is that there's been a growing botnet. They've been attacking Android open source TVs, and this gang has been making money by basically attacking targets, mostly, and the infection mostly seems to be around Brazil. So that's pretty much the long and short of the story. But I just had to show this graph because I spent some time before the show trying to understand it, and I just gave up. All right, so this is just to note that the first active fix of a exploited Chrome 0 day is, let's see, it was yesterday. So it didn't take as long for that to happen. Obviously, these are highly prized and used in mercenary spyware all the time, and you can kind of get a pulse of how the cat and mouse game is going between Google and these mercenary spyware groups by which critical Chrome vulnerabilities are being fixed this week. The fact that it took us like 16 days to you know, have to patch one of those is honestly not great, but at least it wasn't 2 days. So I'm not going to read into it too much. Either way, patch your Chrome because these are actively exploited. And yeah, that's all I got. City of Majorca is being extorted for $11 million in a ransomware attack. This has caused them to extend deadlines for a large majority of services. They have formed a crisis council to address this. And as you can expect, this is a double exploitation attack, which means that there's also a threat to release information as well. All right, we've got technically we're up on time, but I'm gonna get through these. So this one's kind of wild. This is some U.S. court documents exposing a scheme for antivirus scam. So how does this work? Well, I am an upstanding citizen who maybe isn't so great at technology, and I get a charge. Let's say I get a text message saying my card has been charged for an antivirus renewal. So I'm given a phone number to call if I want to cancel the charge. I call it, and they're like, "Oh, we're so sorry. Your computer came with this service, but we can uninstall it for you, so you won't be charged the $300." And me as this person, like, "Yeah, no, do it. Get it off my computer. I don't want to pay for that." I give them access to my computer, and then they throw up a blue screen. Oh, here we go. So this is the phishing email. Looks like an invoice, letting them know, "Hooray! You've spent $349 on antivirus. Thanks for your money." So this obviously terrifies people who like think that, "Oh my gosh, I've just paid all this money." They don't check with their bank account to make sure that this has actually gone through. And instead, a blue screen pops up as soon as they give access to their computer, and they're like, "Okay, I'm working on some stuff. Sorry about the blue screen. Oh, I fixed it." but in the background, they're actually just transferring $34,000 from the bank account of the victim. So this is obviously a pretty straightforward scam. You create a problem that you think that the victim thinks that you're the person that's going to fix. You get remote access to their computer, and then you use something like TeamViewer or remote access tool to just go and manually transfer the money while they are sitting there on the phone with you. Not a very sophisticated scam, but apparently this has been happening more and more and has been ensnaring more victims. So especially if you know anyone who maybe might not be the best at technology, this is something that they might fall victim to, especially with all the data breaches, giving people access to information about who does business with who, people's private email addresses. All this stuff is breached all the time, and it makes it very easy to contact people, who might fall victim to this sort of scam. I saw a lot of stuff on Mastodon yelling at YouTube about how terrible they were for making ad block heat up their computer, but it turns out it was actually ad block. This was over the last couple of days. Anybody who's using AdBlock and AdBlock Plus, which you shouldn't be doing anyway, since you should be using uBlock Origin, said that YouTube was slowing down, loading really slowly, that they were so terrible. But it turns out, after a little bit of investigation, this was just a problem with AdBlock. It seems like a fix has rolled out. However, it's worth noting that uBlock Origin was not affected by this whatsoever. Definitely a little bit of drama. It seemed as though it might have been that cat and mouse game between YouTube and then ad blockers that are trying to make YouTube tolerable. But it seems as though this was actually just a misstep by AdBlock. So nothing to worry about. And finally, our last story of today, a hacker gained access to 1,500 accounts and proceeded to use them to waste a ton of power to mine $2 million in cryptocurrency by spinning up a ton of virtual machines. So the damage here was estimated at about $53 for every $1 worth of Monero mined. And at $2 million, that's a lot of damage. So this was apparently a Ukrainian person that was arrested. But I guess they were able to do credential stuffing to just get access to like 1,500 different accounts, which he used to then spin up a ton of virtual machines and just get a bunch of other people's computers really, really hot. So apparently this like hosting provider was like, yo, what the hell? And figured out that like something was going on and like contacted law enforcement, and that kind of unraveled the whole thing. But yeah, apparently you can't just do that. you can't just do that. So everyone knows I am skeptical about cryptocurrency. Going to prison for like a very long time to waste a bunch of power to mine cryptocurrency that now you can't access, to me sounds like a futile exercise. But what do I know? I'm not a cryptocurrency expert. I'm a cryptozoology aficionado, I guess. So that is all the news I have this week. A lot of cybercrime going on per usual. But also some good news. Seeing a little bit of the limitations on U.S. data brokers is frankly shocking to me. It was always kind of an open secret, like how much everybody here is tracked by their apps. And it's always a joke that like the Burger King app here will like track you and sell your data like anytime you're close to a Burger King or whatever. So it makes sense that this stuff happens. But actually seeing the government doing something about it here is crazy to me. So I was really happy to see that this week. And I think that was my favorite piece of news. But yeah, so that's all the time we got this week. Ryan, thank you for joining us and showing off a little bit about your journey from being a complete beginner with microcontrollers to making your own thing with the face, which I think is quite an accomplishment. Hopefully we'll see more of your work on our Discord server. And if anybody wants to follow along there, make sure to check out not just the Discord server, but also your YouTube channel. Which I'm going to put up on the screen right now. You've been making a couple videos, and some of them are doing quite well. Especially, I have to say, your YouTube shorts are so good. I think they're really, really good. So I think I've already told you, but I would love to have you on the Redia channel. And I think that I'm going to be asking if you'd like to collaborate with us on some other stuff really soon. So if you want to follow along with Ryan's work, make sure to check out Catspaccio. Sorry, you try it.
Catspaccio.
Catspaccio.
Cat soup.
Okay.
Cool cat soup.
And you can see more of these great videos. Man, I'm so happy with the track. Look at this one. 3.8 thousand views already on like a YouTube short. Like that's really great. 4,000. I'm very impressed, I guess I'll say. So make sure to check out Ryan's YouTube channel, Catspaccio, and hopefully we'll have you back on the show. And I will see everybody else back on the Wednesday Q&A stream. And per always, a big shout out and thank you to Varonis for letting me do the stream, letting me have guests on, letting me spend all this time doing research and like trying out like cool stuff. It's super fun that I get to do this and share this with you every week. So if you want to support the stream, go to varonis.com/Kody. That's Kody. You don't got to do anything other than that, and it will let people know that you appreciate the stream, you want it to keep going, and help support us. That's all we have this week. I will see you next time, and goodbye, everyone.